SNAFUD is a podcast that contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised. Hey guys, welcome to SNAFUD, where the situation is normal, all fucked up. I'm Corey.
And I'm Shannon, and this is the podcast where we bring you the most bizarre true stories in crime and mystery.
They're all those stories that everyone grows up hearing, and you just know that they're so outlandish that if they were true, you would know about it. So sometimes you might think that they're, an old wives' tale, but a lot of these stories are actually true, and that's what we're going to be bringing you on this podcast.
Sometimes they're more true than we hoped they were.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And so for episode 1, we're going to take you into a story that is in the great state of Florida, where we are. Thought we'd start from home, but don't worry, you guys. This is not going to be a constant Florida man podcast. I don't think we could live with ourselves if we did that.
I would move out of the state if we just kept doing Florida man stories. Though I think we are probably on the epitome of the original Florida man with this story.
I think it is the original Florida man, because this guy actually put Key West on the map.
And for those of you guys who don't know, Key West is that little area at the base of Florida, only 90 miles from Cuba, where you can just be whoever you want to be. Between our fantasy fest and the ability to it's so far that at one point it was its own nation, Key West is a unique place.
Yeah, a whole day.
Yeah, well, still, I mean, how many places after, the U.S. is built, do we know that separated for at any given time aside from Texas and Key West?
I mean, I just think it's a great place. It's basically magical. You can be whoever you want to be. You can be whoever else you wish you were. Like, you could be Hemingway. You could be putting on the best makeup of your life and still not look half as good as some of our drag queens.
We were down there actually just a few weeks ago for Hemingway's birthday, and that's kind of what sparked pushing this story to the forefront of what we wanted to tell today.
So we want to bring you guys the story of Carl Tanzler, or Count von Cosel, and his undying love that literally put Key West on the spot. But before I do that, let me give you a little background on Carl, because Carl's crazy.
Yeah, he is.
Alright, so I'm going to say a lot of things like Carl says or Carl believes, and it's because almost everything that we have written down is thanks to Carl. Carl likes to write about himself, and he sure likes to get it published. But some things are so outlandish that they're obviously untrue, and then some of those so obviously outlandish things are actually true. So we'll try and put it together for you guys the best that we can, okay? So on January 12th, 1877, George Carl Tanzler was born in Dresden, Germany. And so Carl's going to claim that he grows up in a manor, that he's very, wealthy, and that the manor he's growing up in is actually haunted by one of his ancestors. And Carl claims that even at the age of 12, he starts seeing said ancestor, the white woman, the Countess von Cosel. And normally that's not like such a big deal. Kids tell stories, but Carl says he's seen her multiple times in his life and that she has a message for him.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So her message to him is that she's going to promise him his future bride. And he better go look for it.
Oh, that's, the last thing you want to have a ghost telling you.
Well, Carl thinks it's awesome because how many people get that opportunity? And he says ever since his first time seeing that ghost that he becomes really involved with the esoteric. He really likes the occult, and he's going to believe very strongly in that as much as he does science. And so Carl likes to say that he went to college at the University of Leipzig, and that by the age of 24, he held final degrees in at least 9 different examinations.
See, I'm going to call bullshit on that one because I'm 30 and a grad student, and the students that I know who went straight through, even at 24, 25, they're holding maybe 2 bachelor's and a master's degree at most.
Yeah, and Carl's not making small claims of things like, underwater basket weaving. Like, he's literally saying he has a master's of arts in medicine and philosophy, like mathematics, physics, chemistry. Like, the man, I'm gonna say this, he's intelligent, but intelligence doesn't mean you're not crazy.
Yeah.
Or a liar. All right, so Carl's background gets a little weird when it comes to right before and during the time of World War I. So Carl's claim is this. He says that after spending some time in India, he moved to Australia in order to learn the navigational seas around Australia, the South Sea Islands. He was building himself a seaplane, and somehow he ended up loving Australia so much that he ended up being there after 10 years instead of moving on. In which during this time, he's making one of the first fucking seaplanes, because it's 19 whatever 01 or something. They barely making planes that make it over land.
Why is he down there though? What brought him to Australia?
He's saying that he's sailing around. He literally claims that he has discovered an island.
Oh, okay, great. So we can add geography to his list of degrees.
And clearly an adventurer, and
Indiana Jones had his degree, and he was a doctor and adventuring all over.
He was not real. Okay.
Fucking Nazis.
He sure did. And that's where... Well, Carl doesn't fall in with Nazis. Carl does end up in trouble because he's a German citizen during World War I.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, much like many other countries all throughout the world, the United States included, there were camps made for people of certain birth places.
Lineage?
Yeah. So, just like we did to the Japanese and the Italians during World War II, Australia had camps for German citizens because they couldn't trust them.
Yeah, well, it's just what they did at that point.
Well, this really hurt Carl's feelings because he said he realized real fast that all these friends he thought he had for 10 years weren't really his friends, and now suddenly he was in a POW camp with, Indian and Chinese POW soldiers, and eventually they say that they moved him out of that camp. They put everyone over to a different jail, which is on an island called Trial Bay, and they call it Trial Bay Goal, and as scary as that sounds, it's literally like a castle on this beautiful island surrounded by bright blue water.
Doesn't sound so bad to me.
Yeah, it just got its name from a ship named the Trial that wrecked there in 1816. So Carl makes another claim that while he's stuck on this island as a POW, that he gets to spend his days freely wandering around the island, and that he's collecting debris and different pieces, and literally he's trying to build a sailboat in secret every day to escape from the camp. And that sounds crazy, right?
A little bit, yeah.
This one turns out to be true. So there's another German citizen who has actually, he turned out to be one of the earliest Westerners in modern times to become a full bhikkhu, which is a fully ordained Buddhist monk. But since his name that he chose to take on later is way too difficult for me to describe, I'm just going to go with Mr. Guth. So Guth did agree, they were both at this camp, that it's a fucking island. Where else were they going to go? So they were given free range during the day to just kind of do whatever, as long as they just didn't, I don't know.
Try to swim home or build a boat?
Or just kill themselves. I don't know. What else are they going to do?
It seems like a nice, easy way to keep people, if it's not like a POW camp, it's more like a concentration camp for people of a certain lineage, it seems like it's probably not so bad.
Didn't seem so, but the thing is the two of them together did try and build a sailboat. It did not work. And then when the war finally ends, they were not allowed to return back to Australia. So Carl says that he was sent back to Europe, and that his whole goal in going back to Europe was to find his family and see if his mother was still alive.
I guess that's not a bad choice.
That would be a great choice if that was the truth, but instead, what Carl neglects to often tell people is between the time that he gets back it's so funny. By the time he freaking gets back to Europe and the time he finds his mom, he gets married to a woman half his age named Doris. And by 1926, he's got 2 daughters named Aisha and Crystal.
Huh. Well, You know, gotta make a life somehow, right?
I mean, that's fine. You'll just never see Carl ever talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
So Carl's claim is that he finds his mother. She's alive. Once, he's been spending some time with her, she begs him to go to America, where his sister has moved, and start his life there. So, agreeing with his mother, he gets on a steamer, and he leaves Rotterdam, and he's heading to Florida. And on his way to Florida, he stops in February off in Cuba first, because that's a quick stop between that and Key West.
Yeah, of course.
It's, again, like Corey said, only 90 miles. So Carl actually plans on only staying in Cuba for about a day and then moving on towards Florida, except for he happens to arrive in Cuba at the time of Carnival. And it's really exciting, and it's really pretty, and it's basically a huge fucking party.
I always wanted to do Cuba for Carnival.
I just always wanted to go to Cuba.
Well, we can work on that.
Well, I hope we make it there someday. So, Carl spends a few days there because of Carnival, and he is convinced that the vision that his ghostly ancestors shown him of his bride is going to be in Cuba, because there are so many pretty dark girls there. Yeah, he's a little racist about it.
Yeah, sounds it.
But after about 3 days, he feels like, nah, my future bride's not here. And so he goes ahead and he says that he continues to be drawn by some mysterious force to Florida.
Yeah, his mom told him to go.
Or, yeah, he was already on his way. But he likes to be special.
Maybe the boat's name is Mysterious Force.
So, Carl lands in Key West, but a telegram he'd sent prior to that supposedly didn't go through to any family members. So,
of course not.
By the time Carl gets to Key West, nobody's there to pick him up. And he has missed the nightly train leaving out of town, because at this time, Key West, which is a 7 square radius mile island.
7 square mile island.
Yeah, I mean, at this time, right now, you can fly in, you can take a boat in, or you can drive in. But during Carl's time, you either had a boat or you frickin' took the train in.
Yeah.
There's no other way about it. And he missed the train, so now he's going on the Overseas Railroad walking for 12 miles. And eventually in the morning, he gets to another, track, or I guess, or rather, he gets to another station, and he boards the train, and he makes his way up past Miami into Zephyr Hills, Florida, where his sister lives.
And Zephyr Hills, just for those of you who care about geography, I do, is on the west coast of Florida, a bit north of Tampa. And when I say a bit, I think maybe an hour by car right now. It's a little bit way up there in the neck of nowhere of Florida.
Think of it as that armpit part.
It's not, because Panama City is not quite that high yet.
Okay.
You're a little bit south.
So, once Carl's living with his sister in Zephyr Hills, it seems like maybe he got kind of bored, because he decides to write his wife, remember her?
That he left in Germany?
Mm-hmm. For her birthday on September 7th in 1926, he painted her a beautiful little watercolor, and on the back, he wished her a happy birthday, and he said, quote, "It's a different world in Florida."
That sounds like an invite to me.
It does to me, too. I mean, he's not wrong. It's beautiful, and I tell people you don't know green till you get here. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure for a resident of, Germany, a young woman who's probably not traveled, and her husband's finally writing her with this beautiful picture, yeah, I would take that as an invitation. So, what does she do? She packs... God bless you, Bridget. That's my puppy. And I love her so much. And if anybody ever tries to hurt her, I will murder everyone. So, anyways, she's 25. She's literally half the age of Carl. And she brings her and her 2 daughters there. And once they get to America, she's deciding that since this is their newly adopted country, that they're going to assimilate. She has her daughters speak nothing but English. I'm sure she keeps a hold of her heritage, but I'm really proud of a mom who's so forward-thinking of wow, you're young enough, we can really
There's a way to keep your heritage and still adapt to your new homeland. There's easy ways to do that. That's why they make the Italian-American Club.
Well, and she 100% felt like this was going to be great. So now she, her 2 daughters, her family is now all brought together in Zephyr Hills, Florida.
That's nice. That's a nice happy family.
Aw, yeah.
But the thing is, Carl's been on his own for a while now, or however long. We don't really quite have a huge timetable on that. So, not long after his wife showed up in Zephyr Hills, Carl makes his way back down to Key West. Mm-hmm. And he buys himself a plot of land and puts down a foundation of a house and starts looking for jobs, especially at the Marine Hospital. He's a person who knows his way around technology, so he felt like that was a good idea for him. But there's a quote here where a woman working at the hospital described von Kosel as destitute. She says that he was willing to take any job at the beginning. He was an attendant who cleaned up after procedures.
Gross.
So he's taking, the lowest of the low jobs at these hospitals. But shortly after...
Take what job you can get.
At this point. And shortly thereafter, he convinces superiors that he was qualified as an x-ray technician. And the head of the hospital allowed him to start working in the radiology department.
I mean, here's the thing about Carl. Again, Carl's not stupid. Carl's incredibly intelligent. He's just a damn liar.
Yeah, he just tells a lot of stories. So guys, we're going to change gears for a little bit away from Carl and introduce Elena Hoyos. She's going to be the other player in this story. And we didn't really go over this before, but when Carl was in his 20s, he's hanging out in cemeteries because that's what you do.
He's the original goth.
And at the same time, he sees the name Elena on one gravestone or another and becomes fixated on the name. Now, that's not going to spell real well for Elena here, but you know where the story is going to go. It's not going to end well for someone. Now,
someone named Elena.
Yeah, and now Elena. So Elena grew up in Key West, and she was the middle child of 3. And, her family came from Cuba. They were of high social standing, but they showed up in Key West, started working at a local cigar factory. Now, cigar factories are great, but they are very cramped environments, and it is very easy for disease to spread around, like, say, tuberculosis. But the nice thing is, cigar factories are a huge part of the growing economy in Key West and Florida at the time. Selling cigars throughout the whole state was a very big deal.
Yeah, I mean, Key West right now it's cigars, it's rum, and it's shipwrecks and recovering the shit that fell off those shipwrecks and basically holding it hostage till you sell it back to people or put it on auction.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is salvage law, and boats would show up, people from Key West would go save the cargo from the boat and then sell it back to their original owner at high prices because they wouldn't just give them money up front.
Yeah, 3 times the price.
Yeah. So Elena is full of life. She's, she loves singing and dancing with her friends and family, attending, the Cuban Club on Duval Street and one of the athletic clubs in Key West. And, she's trying to keep up with the current fashion. She's got beautiful dark hair that she keeps, short and curly, similar to the popular flapper fashion at the time. Her friends recall her being very beautiful and very giving compared to her other sisters.
She was just a really sweet girl in general.
She was, and, they were poor, but she made do with, making her makeup work however she could. She became a very popular singer at local events, at the theater, and showed up in the newspaper a number of times. She meets Louis Hoyos, and the two are married in February of 1926. This is the same month and year as Carl setting sail for Florida initially.
Dun dun dun.
And she's 18, she's loving her husband, and the marriage becomes very, very passionate. And they end up becoming quickly pregnant.
Which, at this time and age, that was expected. A lot of people got married young.
Yeah.
A lot of people had families early. So it wasn't like it was an unhappy...
No, they were happy. They were very loving into each other, and they started having a kid. However, in November, Elena suffers a miscarriage. And after that, her health begins to deteriorate. And her family just thinks it's kind of the baby blues, like you just lost a child.
It's a very traumatic moment.
It's understandable. However, she just doesn't get better, and she starts getting, a recurring cough. Now, as I said, tuberculosis is common in cigar factories, and it's very common in Key West. A number of cases of tuberculosis have been showing up at the Marine Hospital, and in the 30s, it became the leading cause of death in Key West.
I mean, that's crazy to have a certain disease be the major cause in any city, any town. to be the reason why most people are dying. And this wasn't just Key West. This was everywhere.
Yeah, and it's all over.
And people were calling it consumption. So maybe if you read anything about history, you might sound a little more familiar with the term consumption. But it doesn't mean you die because you just eat and eat and eat till you blow up.
Or drank and drank.
Sorry, I'm in my feelings about it. No, consumption really just, it causes the sufferer to have symptoms where they get really slow, they get fever, they literally waste away.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to deal with. And by the 30s and in the the late 20s, by the 30s, the best way to diagnose tuberculosis is using X-ray. You can find lesions on the lungs, and that, however, also shows that tuberculosis is spread far enough where it's at the point where it's a death sentence for you.
I mean, there was no cure for tuberculosis.
Yeah, not back then. And
vaccinate your kids.
Yeah, definitely.
Jesus Christ, I don't want tuberculosis to come back.
Nope. Her family realizes that she's just more sick than being down and out. And they bring her to the Marine Hospital for blood tests and x-rays. And when she's here, she's ushered into an exam room, and in walks Carl von Kossel. Now, this gentleman is walking into this room to see Elena, and he's taken aback by her beauty. She's got this...
Because it's creepy Carl who likes his young women.
Yeah, she's... and she's exactly what he's looking for. She's young, she's dark-haired, she's very playful, according to him. Again, I'm not saying that Elena was or was not. But he walks in to take blood from her, and, she's covering her face, and... he pricks her finger to take blood and hurts her, and he, bows deeply and apologizes for it. And she just says that it's okay, that she was just nervous. He's being the original white knight at this point. And, she eventually shows her face to him, and he finds her very sweet and childlike. And
Gross.
It takes him a while to leave the room. However, he does the examination that he can, and there's not much more reason for him to stay, so he excused himself again with another bow and heads down to his lab to take the blood work, or to do the blood test. Now when he's in the lab, he's sitting there with the blood sample in his hand, and he's just kind of staring at it.
Fondling it.
Yeah, more probably fondling it. Carl is already in love with Elena here.
Gross Carl.
He gets her record because a nurse shows up with more information for him, tells him to get to work. So he starts running his tests, reading through her file, sees that she's married, becomes physically upset. But then, here we go with the quote, guys. Even so, I was indescribably happy. What, after all, did it matter if she belonged to another? Hadn't I belonged to another years ago? Over all these years, what was there in a husband's name or even in a husband's existence? All this had very little to do with me and Elena. The main thing was that I found her, and she was ill, and that I was the best qualified and in a position to help her. Now, I'm going to remind you guys that this hasn't been more than 2 years since his own wife has shown up in Florida.
He's still married.
He's still married. And
And
it hasn't been like he hasn't seen her in 10 years.
She's not dead.
He's seen her in the last 2 years at best.
She's literally like 6 years older than Elena.
Yeah, and she's not much older than Elena.
Oh my god, what's the matter with
So-
my husband? Well, I guess you wouldn't know, would you, Carl?
This is why we keep calling him Creepy Carl.
Creepy Carl.
So the next day, Elena shows up for x-rays, and Carl's there to provide the service. He sees that there's lesions on the lungs in her x-rays and knows that it's tuberculosis. And, he gives the diagnosis, and out of politeness, Elena and her mother invite Carl to their home because, at that point in time, it's the 20s, you're going to be polite to your neighbor and be like, oh, thank you, doctor. If you would like to come to our home for dinner,
Please, stop by anytime.
stop by anytime. It's just politeness. But Carl doesn't take it like that, and he shows up that very evening.
Yeah, Carl totally got the hint.
And, yeah, he's such a good guy. And over the next few nights, or, over that dinner, and probably the next few nights, I'm sure he showed up more, he's talking to the family, stating that he wants to help take Elena's care over, saying that he can get her out of Key West to an international hospital that can specialize in this, in drier climates, because Key West is a very tropical area. It's very wet and humid, and tuberculosis is going to spread. However, Elena's family and Elena herself don't want this.
I mean, they don't even know this guy.
They don't know this guy from anybody, but they don't also want to leave Key West. It's their home. So he makes it a point where he's going to try to bring his equipment over and, give Elena radiation therapy on his own.
Yeah, because Carl thinks he can do that.
He just thinks he's the best doctor there is. For a little bit of time it happens, and, the next few weeks or months, any spare time he had between work and caring for Elena by making house calls with radiation equipment, Carl is back in the business of building seaplanes.
Because of course he can.
However, this one is named the CTS Elaine von Kosel.
What's that mean?
He's already thinking that she's going to become his countess. And
I want to be somebody's countess.
yeah, so that's where that's coming from. And just as an aside, guys, this plane is sitting in the yard behind the hospital. So it's on a military base. The chief of the hospital just doesn't care and lets Carl be Carl and build his damn airplane.
Okay, Carl, you do you.
And not long after being told that she's got tuberculosis, Elena's husband actually abandons her and heads to Tampa and eventually ends up back in Miami with another woman.
Wow, guys are so fucking amazing and wonderful husbands during this time.
Yeah, I'm sure one has a point to deal with that they just lost a baby and now she's terminally ill.
Let me leave her.
But I'm also fairly convinced that Carl had his hand in this somehow. It just seems too coincidental that Carl isn't involved here.
I mean, according to him, what is even in a husband?
Right? So, if he just leaves, that's why I constantly am thinking that Carl might be involved here. But let's back up a minute. And like I said, we're helping Elena with her medical now. Carl's making house calls. He's even showing up bringing gifts and medicinal wines.
Like every
day. Now, he also has this family of his back in Zephyr Hills where he was sending part of his paycheck every week. And those mailings back up to Zephyr Hills are becoming farther and few between and eventually cease altogether.
Because, that wife was a long time ago.
And this one's right here in front of him, and Carl may have the attention span of a goldfish. Shiny key syndrome, Carl.
If I get a goldfish, I'm going to name it Carl.
I am not ever coming over to visit again. Now, near her 21st birthday, Carl proposes to Elena. And this is going to be kind of a running theme for Carl, constantly proposing to Elena.
Hey, will you marry me? No. Will you marry me? No.
And
you're going to die. Will you marry me? No.
Elena puts it into the most sweet and poetic way possible, saying that even though her husband isn't around, she's still a married woman. And just trying to kind of push Carl off in the most soft way possible. However, it really doesn't help. Now, Carl keeps treating Elena between the Marine Hospital and making home visits, but eventually the family kind of kicks him out of the house because those are devil machines and they don't want them at home.
Which they're totally right. People had no respect for radiation. They still have no respect for radiation. That shit will kill you.
Yeah, and, so they go back to meeting at the hospital more often than not. Elena starts missing appointments and making excuses why she couldn't come.
Do you imagine why?
And at this point, Carl can't take it, and he starts going back to the house and stating that he'll make home visits again, and even if he can't take the machines from the hospital, he can build his own, because Carl is an engineering marvel and can make these machines. But the family's starting to go to other doctors around Key West. And while they're, maybe not so trusting in Carl, he is offering to treat her. But the x-rays that she's getting from other doctors are showing that the tuberculosis is worsening. There's nothing that's slowing it down at this point.
And there's nothing they can do for
her.
And
there's nothing they can do. All the other doctors are just prescribing pain medication and saying that they can, make her suffering a little bit easier. Carl is the only medical professional on the island who's claiming that he can cure their daughter. Now, like I said, Carl's making house calls and showing up. So much so that it's bothering the family so much so that they eventually just move away from their home altogether.
Which is, that's crazy. Some people literally live with, ghost and poltergeist or next to a pedophile because they can't afford to move. And these people hate Carl enough to be like, fuck it, we're moving.
So now we've got Carl being inconsolable because he has no idea where his beloved Elena went. And we have him walking through Spanish neighborhoods of Key West peeking in windows. And if you've seen a picture of this guy, which, if you're following us on Instagram or seeing our website, there's pictures of him up there. He's not the most easy-looking guy.
No, picture like an elderly, decrepit, kind of creepy-looking Freud.
Basically, any old German scientist you want to picture.
And then picture him sneaking his little eyes and through your windows. His
little Weasley eyes through your windows. He's not what you want to have peeking through your window at night. Anyway, he's walking through, and one night there's an elderly Spanish woman who's standing on her porch, and she calls him over. And she states that his girl is very, very sick, and she knows that she knows that Carl is doing his best to help her, so she leads him to Elena's family's home.
Dumbass.
And she pissed off that family.
They were extremely upset.
They were not happy with this woman, and I can swear that she's probably not getting any more fruitcakes for Christmas. But now Carl knows where they're at, so he starts coming around again to administer his medical treatments, ranging from electrical current stimulus to some radiation to medicinal wines and fresh fruit. And at one point, Elena's family is all hanging out together, and they break her bed because Elena's bedridden at points or another. And Carl goes out and buys the biggest bed he can find, dreaming of one day it being his and Elena's marital bed.
Carl's a dreamer.
Like I said, Carl's a crazy guy, and Elena's still getting progressively worse. She gets the cough gets more severe. She's getting short of breath. Her temperature is dropping. And eventually, Elena looks at Carl and tells them that she's going to die and that the only thing that she can leave behind is her body.
So please stop asking to marry me.
And, according to Carl, she begged him to take care of her body after death. Ugh. And he agreed. And in his mind, this was a marriage vow, a wedding vow from Elena for Carl. And, for him, everything's falling into place.
Of course it is.
Now, in October 25th, 1931, Elena's putting on one of her new silk gowns as given to her by Carl because his gifts range from dresses to jewelry to fruits and wine.
All the things he has to pay for instead of sending money to his daughters.
Yeah, all this other, who cares about the other family of Carl? He just has this one true love now. And, she gets herself dressed up very pretty and lets her father take her for a car ride around the island. And
that's a big deal.
It is. If you're 21...
It's 1931.
Yeah.
Cars, especially on the island, are few and far between. And she's getting to put on all her beautiful things and go around and show off that she's riding around in a car. It's just a good day.
Yeah, and, she is saying farewell to her friends, so there might be a point where she knows that it's the end. Around 5 p.m., Elena's brother-in-law comes to the Marine Hospital and dives in to find Carl. He has to let him know that Elena's passed away. And they both head back to Elena's house very quickly. And on her bed, without any jewelry or any of her silk gowns, in some discarded shirt, lays Elena. And Carl hurries over to her and checks her pulse and finds out that she really is gone. Now, according to Carl, Elena's father introduces him to the funeral home caretaker and begs Carl to cover the funeral and burial, which of course he's going to. He selects the coffin, the flowers, and the final resting place. He yells at Elena's sister during this time. Her sister's name is Nana, who's trying to return some of the silk dresses and some of the jewelry.
Oh, she's not trying to return it. He's saying she fucking stole that shit.
Oh, see, the way I keep reading this at every given time is that Nana's trying to take it and return it back for money for herself.
Oh, hell no. So that's the fucked up part is he shows up. She spent all day wearing some of her beautiful gowns. She has a bunch of them. So why, when she's dead, does he walk into a room and she's laying in somebody else's, like garbage shirt,
Yeah.
And so, and he's just yelling at Nana. He's just like, where's her stuff?
And, so he gets her stuff back, and he's, all for taking care of, Elena, dressing her in one of the dresses that Nana was trying to steal, and some of the jewelry again. And the day of her funeral, Carl sits alone in Elena's room with the body. He's convinced that she's still watching him from under her eyelids, and that her spirit is still floating in this house. Now, the funeral procession here to Elena's final resting place for Carl is feeling more like a wedding march.
Ugh, so weird.
Because in his head, he's very happy. Elena's no longer in pain, and no one could keep them apart. So that's where this is going, guys.
Oh my god.
However, what makes Carl unhappy is that, it's a fairly shallow grave, and due to the ground, Key West isn't very high at its peak. It's maybe 3 feet above sea level. That's why it flooded during Hurricane Irma.
And all of the hurricanes.
And any hurricane or any time the wind blows the right direction, it floods. He understands that it's a shallow grave, and he's very upset with that. So he runs to his airplane and grabs a tarp and brings that to cover the burial site and covers it with stones. And, he comes to visit her daily and arrange new flowers every day for Elena. Now, initially, Carl's family, or Elena's family, told Carl that everything had been burnt and the family was going to be moving to a new home.
Everything like her stuff.
Yeah, all of her
dresses, her
jewelry. And Carl calls their bluff on this, saying that the jewelry and clothes were still under a payment plan and they were more than welcome to take it over. However, everything kind of shows back up.
Amazing.
And, it's all safe and unburnt. Now, he also tells the family that even if they were moving or not, he was going to move into Elena's room because he felt that her spirit was still there. And more than try to fight it, the family allows Carl to stay in Elena's room, where he's paying $5 a day, which is going to be very good for the family. Oh, $5 a month. My apologies.
It's still a big.
It's still.
Deal.
I mean, yeah, that's still a huge amount for this.
These are people
here.
who hated him so much they moved. But I mean, when he's offering money in what's basically about to be the Great Depression, yeah, it's hard to say no to $5 a month.
Over the next bit of time, he's collecting more jewelry and dresses of Elena's to prep, because he's not going to let Elena's body decay. He's going to take very good care of Elena for the rest of time.
All right, so now, even though Carl's still working every day at the hospital, he's then spending every evening over at Elena's grave because he's planning out to build her a new mausoleum. Again, he's getting really upset because he's actually detecting a smell of decay coming from the grave. It's really freaking nasty. And so he and the family managed to obtain a Florida permit in order to disinter the body so that the foundation of the mausoleum can be laid, and in order to do that, she was brought to the Lopez funeral home. So the mausoleum took 3 months to build, 1 to pour the cement, 1 for the concrete to cure, 1 to finish the interior. So she's literally at the funeral home for 3 months. But while she's over at the funeral home, Carl probably slides some money to the funeral home director. But he makes a very, what is at first a normal request at the time, which is to rebed Elena. And that means that he wants to, take her out of the broken casket that they have her in, that he wants, clean her up a little bit, maybe put her in some new clothes. I mean, why would you put something dirty in a brand new building? Basically, it was a very common, understandable request.
If you want your loved ones to rest in peace, you want them, like with funerals, you have them looking their best. So that's what he wants to do for Elena.
So he spends that night with help from the funeral director, and they have to remove her from the broken coffin because it had been broken and water had infiltrated it. The cloth that had been placed all over her had now stuck to her body because it had been decaying. So it literally took them hours of spraying antibacterial sprays and then peeling the cloth away.
Yeah, I hate bodies.
So by the end of all this, when she's all cleaned up, Carl makes a determination that it's really just the casket that smells, and it's totally not Elena. And after,
of course not.
Right? So he wipes down her body, he redresses her, and they place her back into a airtight coffin with 100 screws that he built. Unfortunately for the undertaker, the one night that Carl needed turned into, I need some more time with her. And that's where I think the money and the, you know what, you do you, buddy. He got his own time alone with Elena, because the next night he came in and he removed her from the new casket with 100 screws. and he placed her into a specially made incubator tank that he then topped off with a special formula of his own making.
Because Carl is a super chemist.
He is a super evil genius. And he puts the incubator tank back into the original coffin, and they close everything up. All right. So, Elena and her doubly safe coffin, tank, whatever, that only Carl knows about, gets to go into her newly made mausoleum. It's actually gorgeous. It's really pretty. It's like a white stucco kind of looking building. It must have kept it really cool. And so literally for 18 months, Carl is going to the mausoleum every day. Well, more like every night. It's got 3 outer locks that he gets to unlock, and he'll sit inside with her every night with like candles going on inside the mausoleum. But one night, because Carl's old as fuck and it's really humid, he fell asleep while he was just sitting beside her. And then he claims that he woke up from a jolt because almost all of the 50 locks on the casket suddenly all opened by themselves.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Not for Carl, because he's super stoked that he's pretty sure this is Elena, because she's a prankster and she loves her funnies. So he's like, wow, I better make sure she's all good. So then he unlocks like whatever locks are kind of left that hadn't been unlocked. And he's swearing that from inside the casket, he can hear a soft tapping as if nails are probing or scratching the metal interior.
Nope.
So once he gets everything unlocked, everything goes silent.
Of course, that's how it works.
Yeah, all done. No more. So he bends his ear really close to the inner coffin, and he's just listening. And he still doesn't hear anything. So he even unscrews the top of the tank to check on her, and he swears that he suddenly smells this really strange and pleasant perfume that just filled the room from the tank, and that the tank didn't have any pressure gas inside of it to make it. And that this was the smell of the warm, sun-soaked skin of a young woman.
Of course, because that's what Carl wants to smell.
Yeah, but this is really just the smell of fucking decay, and it's almost got like a bittersweet, stewy smell.
Yeah, I'm not gonna have stew again, thanks.
Carl likes it. After this moment, Carl has decided that he can start having conversations with Elena. And not only is he having conversations with her, but she's having them back with him.
Oh, yeah, because, Carl is completely sane here.
Totally. And after nights of conversation, that's not enough. Elena's now singing to him.
Oh, great.
And so he swears that the song that she keeps singing is about a lover who opens the grave of his dead bride.
Yeah, that's a song I want to be singing.
So Carl now convinces himself that he gets in an argument with Elena. And she's asking him if he still loves her. And he's like, I totally love you. I built this house for you. Like, you're really safe here. But, according to him, Elena begged him to go home with him. The place where he lives with her parents.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
But according to Carl, Elena comes up with a plan to get her body out of the tomb.
Yeah, because that's where I want to take my lessons from, is a dead body.
I'm not going to argue with the dead. So, Carl takes his wagon, a little red racer wagon. He gets cushions, blanket, rope, and he goes to the mausoleum one night. And he procures her interior, casket from the original one into the wagon.
Incubation chamber?
Yep. And he places it into the wagon, gets it all wrapped up into blankets and ropes, and he's got it nice and secured, and as he's rolling her out of the mausoleum, they're heading towards the fence. He believes that there are literally fucking ghosts coming out of the graves, and they're, marching with him as if he's taking her home, and they're all really, really happy about it.
Yeah, that's the wedding march Carl wanted.
So as Carl gets to the fence, because remember, Carl's, in his late 50s at this point, right? Maybe older?
Yeah.
And so he goes to lift the inner casket out of the wagon up over the fence, but he loses his balance, and the tank tips.
Nope.
And it literally spills all the lovely, gooey, perfumey shit inside, all over, like, the back of his head and his neck, and it's, like, soaked into his lapels. And then he literally, like, has to take this deep breath, and he gets his balance, and with a prayer, he pushes it over, and he gets everything right, and he manages to sneak him and the wagon and Elena to, like, a shed that he had temporarily rented. And, like, again, Carl is, like, the luckiest son of a bitch you will ever meet, because almost everything always works out for Carl. Like, literally, he's hauling a dead body, and nobody sees him. And it worked beautifully. So he gets to the shed, but it's got no running water. So he decides, like, he's got to find something, because it doesn't smell so great anymore, according to Carl.
Yeah.
And he finds a bottle of whiskey, and he just he gets naked, and then he just dumps whiskey, like, all over his clothes. And he just gotta get rid of this smell. And so then he puts back on his liquor-soaked clothes, and he locks up, like, the shed, and he leaves her there for, like, more than a day. Manages to sneak back into the house that he fucking lives with her parents in without waking them up, and washes himself up and thinks he's done a great job.
Yeah, they're just drunk Carl at that point.
So after letting it, like, the casket rest in the shed for a day, Carl now wants to sneak Elena's body away from there. So he borrows a sedan, like a car, because there's not a whole lot of them on the island, and he uses it to put Elena's body in, and he drives her behind the Marine Hospital to their plane, because it's theirs.
Yeah, it's definitely their plane now.
Yeah, and he moves her body into the cabin of the plane, and in doing so, he feels that he's now successfully taken full possession of her. It's really gross. What's
Carl
more gross is it's a fucking tin can in the Key West sun.
And when we were there, it was 96 degrees with no chance of shade.
It's so hot.
And if you think about it, that's outside. If you're inside something that's not super cool,
that's
like a
metal plane. That's why you just drink when you're there.
I know.
All right, so with time, he gets to fill the cabin with her clothes. He's got her a wedding dress, flowers, jewelry,
everything
shoes.
A dead girl could ever want.
Fuck yeah, like more than I got. So he's got a distilled water tank for washing and drinking for both of them.
Yay.
He's brought in all of his chemicals, so he's got like a fully stocked lab in there to basically take care of Elena. But he can only do this in the dead of night because he does not want to get caught. So it takes him at least 2 nights before he can even unscrew the top of the casket and see her for the first time in 18 months. Yeah, it's awesome. She
the last thing I want to be thinking about.
She's got no eyes. They're broken and they sank because that's what they do. And again, the dress that they had put on her again had decayed into her body.
Of course it did.
So Carl's going to carefully detach the uppermost layers of clothing, but he wants to keep her skin intact, so if the clothing sticks too much, he's going to have to let it soak before he can remove it. So he literally has a bucket next to him in the cabin of this plane in which he's like pulling off these pieces of cloth from her fucking decaying body with the pieces of her skin coming off with it. And he's dumping it into the bucket, and by the time it starts overflowing and it smells so bad, he has to run out of the plane out to the ocean side, and he just dumps it into the ocean.
Yeah, I'm not swimming Key West water.
And he had to literally do this at least twice.
That's great, Carl. Such good choices, buddy.
Good job, Carl. Alright, so once he's got that done, he decides he's gonna wash her body again and again and again and again.
He's gone full boil.
Yeah, and then he's also washing out her tank, because remember last time it's not so much her, it's the tank. But this time he's going to clean out the tank with some phenol solution in order to disinfect and remove the smell. And meanwhile, Carl's going into town and buying 6 bars of soap and perfume every day.
And Key West, like I said, we've said 100 times here, Key West isn't a very big area nowadays. Back then, it's going to be even smaller. It's just going to be what's called Old Town now. So there's maybe 2 or 3 stores that are selling soap. So he's becoming a repeat customer everywhere.
I mean, it's just super obvious, and people are noticing, but he's also Crazy Carl, so it's like they're watching, but they don't care.
I'm fully convinced that any guy who introduced himself as Count in the modern day and moved to America walks around with a cane and a cape. So it's just super easy to introduce himself that way.
Oh my god. So, in his mind, he's having another argument with Elena about how he wouldn't love her anymore, and he argues that of course he does, and in fact he loves her even more now. So in order to prove it, he kissed her lips and he breathed air into her lungs until her chest rose.
Nope.
And then he dressed her in her bridal gown, and once she was all dressed, he sank into her casket, and then they made out for real, and then he fell asleep laying beside her until the morning light came up.
Nope.
It was the perfect wedding night for Carl.
I hate human bodies. I don't know how we survived.
We don't. So Carl was convinced that Elena can be resurrected for a second time. This is from his own understanding of the Brahmin religion, and in his mind, he feels that a person can be brought back to life after a year of death, being cured from whatever incurable disease like that person died from. But here's the thing, Elena's been fucking dead for like 2 years now.
Yeah, I'd say it's like we're closer to 2 years, 18 months in the hole. So
nothing really like logic doesn't matter to Carl if it doesn't fit into what he needs.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But according to Carl, Elena's current state is so bad that he can't bring her back to life yet. So he needs time, and he's using this time to continue to wash and perfume her. He's removing maggots. He's packing her insides with cloth, and
those eventually turn to organs.
And he's wrapping her fingers and toes so they basically won't fall off. And he's even washing her hair, which is the second most
intimate thing you
could do with a lover.
Oh, God.
So,
he's definitely Charles Boyle.
He puts splints on her nose in order to keep like her nose from sinking in. And so after 1 month, he actually removes those, and now he claims that her nose is even more beautiful than when she was alive.
Yeah, Carl needs to stop.
Fucking necrophilia.
Oh yeah, in the worst of ways.
He's set up a pulley system in the plane in order to strain out her arms because they've been crossed over her chest. And he's also using hot liquids to restore her intestines.
Not sure that's how it works, but okay, Carl, you do you.
Uh-huh. And then while he's got some free time, he's making at least several death masks, hoping that one of those would at least be like the perfect semblance of her. Unfortunately, what he also finds out is that the silk he's using sticks to her face, and it's pulling on her face, eyes, and hair.
Well, it's a fucking decaying body. What more can you expect?
No, he's bringing her back. So eventually, he felt like this is actually a good thing, and in order to keep her from getting infested with more bugs, he wanted to cover her whole body this way. In Carl's eyes, Elena's actually coming back to life. So for months, he kept this routine of feeding her and instilling vitamins in her. And he literally thinks she's improving like daily, and that she's even starting to get human expressions back.
I don't know.
Nope, probably not. So, unfortunately for Carl, the naval base commander died, and they got a younger commander that took charge of the hospital and then was like, what the loving fuck are you doing on my goddamn ground with your bullshit airship that doesn't even work? Get that shit off my property. And so he was done. He was like a real military guy who was done with his shit.
Yeah, he's not using the U.S. as a vacation spot anymore.
So Carl must be a problem, because in order to get him off their land, they provide him new land in order to move the airship that Carl's built.
You live here now, Carl.
You live here now, Carl. Come over here. So they actually give him a piece of land, and it's called Rest Beach. And he has the plane moved, and he's going to build a house there. And so in order to get the plane moved there, he hired a truck, and then he asked what he felt like was now his brother-in-law,
Of course he does.
Mario, to help him move the plane.
So Mario is Nana's husband.
Right. And so literally they're moving this fucking plane down the road of Key West, and like Mario's riding on the top of it, waving to people like he's in a goddamn parade.
Oh, I would have been waving too.
And like 5 feet underneath him is the rotting body of his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
He's got no idea. It's a great day for him.
Yeah.
So it's at this exact time in 1934 that Carl's daughter, remember he's got 2 of those?
Yeah.
Daughter Crystal dies from diphtheria in Zephyr Hills, Florida. And so Doris, his real wife, is actually writing him and pleading for his help, just to bury their daughter.
Yeah.
And Carl literally had nothing for her. He had nothing to give her because he literally felt like he had to spend all of his time, all of his money on Elena. He did not even come up and attend the funeral of his daughter. So while Carl's spending 2 years on West Beach with Elena, he's calling it South Beach. He's built a house. He's got himself an organ. He's even put himself on his own electrical grid because he didn't want to rely on the city or the island. And he's built his own x-ray machines. So he's using those in order to take care of Elena, using his own technique in order to collect gases that the body's expelling. And then he's turning them into some concentrated liquid, and I don't know what he did with it.
I don't want to know what he did with it.
I don't want to know either. Finally, when he feels like the house is completely built and that he's like double screened all the openings, he can put Elena back out in the open. She can come out of the incubator for a bit.
Oh, great.
So he, meanwhile, has built her a new container to house her body for liquid circulation. His plan is to pump her container with a solution of oxyquinoline sulfate of sodium at 38 centigrade body temperature.
So that's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit for those using freedom units.
And he would like to let this circulate around her body for about 24 hours. And then for 5 minutes every day, he'd bring the body out and he'd place her on his x-ray table. And for 5 minutes, he would radiate the shit out of her in radiation treatment. And then he would carefully place her back into what he called her plasma bath. And so he actually was really satisfied that she was really returning to life because she was gaining weight and regaining her living form. But he wanted to continue these treatments until she weighed 100 pounds. So when he first got her, she weighed only 30 pounds. And at this time, she weighed about 90. And he's literally getting so, quote, excited to see how well she's doing, that he can't help himself but lean into the incubator and give her a kiss on the lips.
Yeah, Carl, you need to know.
Sometimes that nice little fluid circling.
No.
Yep, that gets in there too. He's playing his organ for her every night. He's hoping that the cosmic law of vibrations of the music through harmonic sound waves would help her atomic structuring.
That's great.
Carl's got hopes.
So, we're coming out of the Great Depression, and just by nature, Carl's becoming very paranoid here. He's worried about thieves coming in, because with the Great Depression, people are out of money, so they're looking for whatever they can get and steal. So, at one point on West Beach, Carl is becoming increasingly worried of thieves. It's becoming the Great Depression, people are losing homes, and they're worried, he's worried that people are going to come into the home and start stealing part of his equipment or the money or the jewelry that he has. And at one point, he actually breaks down the incubator and pulls Elena out of it. He covers her head to toe in alcohol, a perfume, and a silk layer for protection because he's very paranoid about the bugs. And it's Florida, so you're fighting a losing battle there, buddy. He guards her during the day, and he sleeps in the same bed with her at night.
Yay!
So, it is becoming their marital bed, as sad as that is. And in order to try to make sure that she's still gaining weight, he's feeding her liquids from his own mouth. So,
Mama bird and baby bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Mama bird and baby
See, and
bird.
I'm choking on this one, so that's why I'm stuttering at this moment. He's making sure that the liquids would stay down as air left her chest and no liquids would. So he would make sure that everything's staying in. And after 5 years of treatment, he was
5 fucking
5 years. So we're looking at 5 years dead, and after a year, maybe he can come back. This is not that. This is 6.5 years, 7 years. He's convinced, though, he's observing signs of increasing health. There's no heartbeat, but he can hear liquids moving around her chest, and a flutter, and then liquids moving again. So, he doesn't understand how gases work.
Or maybe how when you force liquids into something, it just
sloshes around.
Sloshes around in there for a bit.
So, in 1936, the city of Key West blew up a concrete pier near Carl's home. This during a workers program, probably like the CCC, which was used to get us out of the Great Depression. However, Carl felt that his home was no longer secure nor secluded enough, and he rehomed his Elena and his plane into a wood shack on Flagler Avenue, about 2 miles outside of Old Town. So, Flagler now, if you visit Key West, is another one of the drags that you can get to. But
everything is built up on this island to the very brink. But at this time, if he was moving out to Flagler, he was by himself.
That's the edge of town. And Carl eventually gets laid off from the hospital, and now he can spend all his time with his beloved.
Oh, that's nice.
He couldn't have his electrical setup, as he did in the prior house, so incubation wasn't happening for Elena for a bit. And he chose to allow her in the fresh air, knowing that she would partially mummify again, but hoping that his incubation, and once he was ready to do it again, could cure that. He continued to sleep beside her so that if anything were to begin to leak, he could seal it up again with silk and wax. And I'm choking through this because I don't like a normal living human body, never mind a
hey, Corey.
goopy... No.
Corey, moist bed.
Yeah. No. And, so anytime any part of Elena was shrinking from fluid loss, he'd fill it up with sterile cotton packing and overlaid it with silk and wax. Now, on July 29th, 1936, Carl feels a miracle has occurred. He awakes in the morning and was sure that he was witnessing the fingertips of Elena's right hand moving. So he took her hand and swore it had become more relaxed and soft in his own. And then her hand and arm lifted up, and she touched his face and his lips.
I'm sure she did.
He said that he then kissed her hand. Her eyes opened and looked at him intently.
Eyes she didn't have?
Now she has glass eyes, so as intently as glass eyes can look at anything. She rolled over on her side and attempted to get up, but he was worried that she was going to strain herself and told her to rest. She told him...
Don't strain yourself, dear. You've been dead for 6 years.
She's telling him that she's come to visit, so she doesn't want to rest. He again tells her to rest and hurried off to make a hot beef tea. And when he returned, she was in the same position he had left her, but once again rigid and motionless. He fed her the tea in his mama bird, baby bird way.
Gross.
And she continued to still be a dead body.
Because that's what they do.
Yeah, they just kind of don't move much, from what I've been told. And if they do, that's when you need to go for the head. And, he's so sure that she was alive again that he felt that he really needed to pay attention to her care. And, he discovered that the silk, he was out of the silk that he was using to keep the bugs out of her body. Mm. So, after he saw that she was still just a dead body, he rewrapped her for a second time. And over the next bit of time, she starts losing weight again because he's not incubating her. The body's drying out. It's just desiccation, and, when he puts her in water in the plasma bath, she's just sucking in liquids. At one point in 1940, Carl falls off a boat through deck frames that he's working on for some work.
Which is just... It sounds like really simple, but that hurts like a motherfucker.
Yeah, he's breaking his ribs when he's falling through the deck frames, and Carl's not a young guy.
And it's dangerous. He's most likely by himself. Mm-hmm. I mean, I fell into a hole the other day just because the stupid boat moved to the side.
I know.
If a fucking deck frame breaks on you, he's lucky all he broke was his ribs.
And this upset Carl greatly. One, because he was in pain. Two, because he was figuring he was never going to make it home, and what would happen to Elena if he never made it home. And then he heard her voice telling him to take a deep breath, breathe it out, and he could come home. And doing so, he freed himself and head back home in agonizing pain to lay in bed. And his injury puts him into a deep depression. He starts spending more of his time at Elena's mausoleum, believing that one day it'll be both of theirs.
Fairly soon.
Very soon. When like I said, when you start getting close to death, I'm fairly certain that you can understand what's going to happen.
I mean, that's a very common thing, too, for elderly people who get very hurt or very sick to finally kind of feel their, mortality.
Yeah.
And they tend to get very depressed, and they start planning for things, and he's at this stage.
At one point, he's convinced that he can hear Elena talking to him for over the course of 3 days and saying that she wasn't safe and that he needed to hide her. And, confused, why she wouldn't be safe in their own bed, she wouldn't answer that question. But he awoke to feel her entire body shivering next to him on the 4th day. He takes her hand, asks if she were going to heaven, and kissed her, and she lay still.
Sure she did. Yeah, of course she did. Right? Yeah, I'm sure she's moving all over again. But on September 28th, 1940, Mario, Elena's actual brother-in-law, came to visit Carl to let him know that Elena's mausoleum had been broken into and that her casket had been tampered with. And since Carl's the only one that knows the actual truth of where Elena really is, he kind of panics and he follows Mario to the graveyard, and he ends up meeting with Elena's sister, Nana, and Elena's mother. And so along with them is also the cemetery sexton and the undertaker. So basically the funeral guy and the guy that takes care of the graveyard.
Yeah.
And so Nana is immediately insisting that the coffin needs to be open. And Carl is disagreeing with her hard because he knows fucking Elena's not in there.
No one wants this open anyway because that body has been down for 8 years.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the sexton and the undertaker are like, yeah, don't do that. I mean, it hasn't been messed with in 8 years. Nobody wants to see what's inside there. We're telling you.
Yeah.
And so they even assure Nana, look, even if the outer lid's been tampered with, clearly the inner lid of the second coffin has not. And so the men all get their way, and they all decide not to open the casket. And Carl decides to return home, and he's telling Elena, and he's kissing her, and he's just telling her, what a piece of shit he thinks, Elena's sister is, and, what problems she's causing. And he's telling her that he thinks his secret is really secure. But on October 1st, Mario comes one more time to Carl and says, you gotta get to the graveyard. So they get there together, and now this time there's a huge crowd because Nana is throwing a fucking fit, and she's demanding in front of this entire crowd that coffin needs to be opened. And so then Carl turns it around and just accuses Nana, who's also dying of tuberculosis at this moment.
Everyone is.
Right? So he's then accusing Nana that she just broke into the tomb herself because she was trying to get to Elena's jewelry.
Oh.
And the funny thing is Nana went silent for a minute. And I think she fucking got called out on that shit.
He hit a nerve.
And so then after a few seconds of silence, she said, please open the tomb. Let me see Elena. If I see her inside her coffin, I'll be happy. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy. I just need to know that she's all right, and I'll be satisfied. And so Carl takes her at her word because Carl likes to hear what Carl wants to hear.
Yeah, of course.
And he's afraid that if he says no to her, she's just going to make another scene. So Carl says, okay. He's going to let Nana see Elena, but first, let's go somewhere else. Let's go talk it out. And she asked him where he wants to go, and he was like, let's go to your house. And she was like, fuck that, you can't come in my house. And so they agreed to go to Carl's house, which I cannot fucking believe, but I mean, I think he's literally delusional. He's taking her at his word. So they get to his house, right? And Nana has brought this other woman with her in the car, but when they all get out of the car, when Nana's inviting this random woman to come in, Carl says no, that the house is only for family.
Yeah.
Carl's not putting anything on hold about how he feels about his position with these people. That's his sister-in-law, that's his brother-in-law. So the lady can't come in. Nana doesn't even really come in. She actually stays close to the door, but her husband, Mario, goes into the house, and he heads towards Elena's bed, and he's basically saying something like, here's Elena's bed, Nana. And, Carl then looks at Nana, and he says, come here, Nana, and see how beautiful Elena is, resting in her bed in her silken garments and with all her jewelry. Come and see. She could not have it better anywhere. I think this will pacify you now.
Carl is... I just can't even with him.
Carl, no.
Yeah, just no.
Poor fucking Nana is now literally losing her mind because this is not what she expected in the fucking least. She's looking at what is essentially a mummified doll of her sister, which she refuses to think is Elena. She's begging Mario that they need to leave. They need to go to the cemetery right now. They need to see what's inside that casket. Like she's just praying against hope that that's where her sister is. And then, according to Carl, basically, Mario asked Nana why couldn't he see Elena was, like, right here. This is Elena. And so Nana asked Carl how long he had Elena. And he literally told her he's, like, 7 years.
See, that's... I guess just the whole, like, the thing, the way Mario approached that is just such a nonchalant way. And that is a little odd to me, so I'm wondering if that's Carl's story.
I really think that's more Carl's story.
I think so. But...
like, according to Carl's saying Mario's telling Nana that she's crazy.
Yeah.
And according to everyone else, the reality is like, Mario's like, this dude's fucking crazy. We gotta go.
Yeah.
Alright, so Nana demands that Elena should be put back in her vault. You know, that she wants to be there when he does so. And then Carl just tells her, like, yeah, Elena's going to go back in her vault, and so is he, and they'll be there together, but it wasn't going to be right now.
Just not now.
And so then Nana and Mario leave, and Carl goes back inside, thinking he now needs to console his bride, and he's very worried about Nana and how much she wants... he thinks now the big problem is Nana still just really wants some jewelry, so he takes... all of Elena's jewelry, and he locks it up for safekeeping.
That's great.
Instead of hiding Elena or getting, moving with her or anything, Carl literally just lives with Elena for 5 more days in their house and thinks everything is just going right back to normal. He's proven to Nana everything's cool. And then on October 5th, a motorcade headed by 2 sheriffs and a justice of the peace came to Carl's house. And then behind them was a funeral car, and then basically every other fucking car in Key West followed that. And so the sheriff presented Carl with a warrant, and it was charging him with being in possession of a dead body. And then Carl showed them the body and was like, yeah, I totally had that body.
Yep, that's me.
And then he was like, and I've had it for 7 years. And so the sheriff then says, I need to see a certificate. So Carl goes, okay, and he hands them her death certificate. But then the sheriff says that wasn't the certificate that he wanted. And so Carl's like, I'm not really sure what other certificate you could be speaking of.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Carl's right on this one. Like, I think the sheriff just didn't know how else to tell him, like, you're fucking weird. We gotta arrest you for that. So basically... the sheriff tells him, if he doesn't have the other certificate, that he needs to go into custody to the court and explain himself. So while all this is going on, there's 2 men who have now gone into Carl's house. They removed Elena's body. They're bringing her out in a wicker basket, and they're going to put her in the funeral car. And when, Carl sees this, he physically gets fucking pissed, and he starts running at
Carl's
them.
Not a normal guy.
And so, in order to stop him, it's like the sheriffs literally had to hold him back and then pacify him. And then Carl's throwing out a lot of legal jargon about, how can I trust what's going on? People are just going into my house and taking my things. And so the sheriff has to explain to him, look, we're just going to place the body at a funeral home, so she'll be safe until the case is settled. Carl, you can totally have her back when everything's settled. Look, we're even going to lock up the house. They even locked it up and then gave him the keys to his house just to pacify him.
Here you go, you crazy old man.
Jesus Christ, you're so cray-cray. And if this is going to make my life easier, then...
whatever I need to do to get you to stop.
Right? So... Carl gets brought to the courthouse, and there's already, every media person from Key West standing there because they'd already heard a rumor that someone was going to get arrested for sleeping with the corpse.
That's headline news right there.
Yeah, and even more people are already on their way down to get to the keys as fast as they can. All right, so then the order comes down by the Justice of the Peace that Carl's going to be held on $1,000 bail. And so he's brought into the county jail for retention, and he's booked for wanton and maliciously demolishing, disfiguring, and destroying a grave. While Carl's being arrested, the newspapers in Key West are basically fangirling so fucking hard for Carl that the boner can be seen to today. Look, they literally have a quote that says, "Over several years ago, the crime, as some call it, was committed."
Yeah, no, that's a crime. I don't care who you are.
I mean, literally, you'd think that everybody would be freaking out about this necrophiliac, and instead, he's got newspapers talking about his undying love and how much he cares for this woman and how lucky she is.
Yeah.
He gets a lawyer for free, Louis Harris. He's like the oldest, most experienced lawyer in Key West, and he's volunteered for the duty, obviously, because it's going to be great media attention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Carl is literally getting so many visitors. He's got friends bringing him snacks, people promising to keep an eye on his house. There is literally a group of women from Tampa who came all the way down to see him because they're cigar workers who heard about him on the radio, and they wanted to wish him good luck and hope that he won his case and got Elena back.
See, I don't understand how that happened, how it went the complete opposite direction of what you'd expect.
How fucking bored can you be when you're like, oh, I wish I was a dead girl?
Yeah, she has everything I could ever want.
While Carl's in jail, they have Elena's body at the funeral home. So instead of being respectful to a girl whose body's been desecrated for like the last 8 fucking years, they actually put her on display. And
of course they do.
Hundreds of people came to the funeral home just to see the mummified doll of Elena. I mean, there's pictures of it. You'll see it. We'll put it on the website. It's just fucking stupid. And then, while this is going on, they make a panel of 3 doctors in order to just even see if, like, Carl's even sane.
Oh, that's probably a good move, though. I mean,
yeah, something's fucking not right. So, October 8th, 1940, there's a hearing held in the courthouse to determine if he had even broken any laws. Because guess how laws come into effect?
When someone breaks something.
Yeah, when somebody fucks up enough that we have to be like, really? We had to write this? We literally had to put it into fucking words? Fine.
We had to write this down for you guys?
Jesus Christ, y'all. Alright, look. So, they get to the courthouse. The first witness in the trial is Nana. And she admitted that she had actually heard rumors for years about how Carl was acting strange, and that she admitted she probably should have looked into it sooner.
Yeah, probably.
She says that she first became suspicious when he basically stopped visiting the graveyard, because remember, for 2 straight fucking years, all he did was go to a graveyard?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one day he just stopped going. And again, people are going to notice. So people came to her with like rumors, and she just didn't look into it. So she explained that when she confronted Carl, that he admitted that he had the body at his home without hesitation, how he kept saying how beautiful the body was, and then he like kept trying to show it to her and insisting that Elena was safe with him. And when asked to describe what it was that she saw when she was brought into the house, she said, quote, "Your Honor, it was the most grotesque thing I have ever seen in my life. Her hair was still on her head. She had glass eyes. Her arms and legs were like sticks with stockings. It was a monster. It was horrible. What I saw will haunt me for the rest of my life." And I can't help but totally agree with Nana, no matter what. Nobody deserves to have to see their loved ones turned into somebody's play toy.
Yeah, not at all.
And then exclaims that she had actually told Carl that she and her husband wouldn't tell anybody about what he'd done if he would just return the body to its grave. But because Carl refused, she was the one that had to send the sheriffs over to get him arrested. She got really emotional, which is totally understandable. And then she looked at the whole crowd in the courthouse, and she said that she'd been watching the hero worship and all these people visiting him. She didn't think it was fucking funny. And then Nana suddenly becomes my hero because she looks to the justice and says, quote, "Something else I'd like to know. Why won't the doctors who examined Elena's body make their findings public? Was Von Kozel done to my sister's body? Was he doing something too horrible for words?
She's asking the question that's on everyone's mind.
First of all, you already fucking put her on display for hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But you didn't put out your findings about what'd been done. Who the fuck are you protecting?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately for the justice of the peace, who really, really, really didn't want to have to ask this question, he was now forced to. So he looks at Carl and, quote, says, Count von Kozel, did you at any time during the more than 7 years you had her, kept her, whatever, did you at any time sexually molest the body of Elena Hoyos?
I'm sure he said it pretty quick, too, after he got through it.
I mean, he literally was just like, I think the man was at a loss for words.
Yeah.
And then Carl answered very strongly in the negative, and then he kind of mumbled, like, less assertively that it was because, like, she was mummified.
Yeah, great, Carl. You're not winning anything here.
I can't fuck her when she's dry.
Oh,
So then Carl's called to the stand, and when he's asked what his occupation is, he states, quote, I'm a chemist, engineer, physicist, scientist, rheumatologist with degrees in philosophy, psychology, and medicine.
The word she mumbled through is for X-ray tech and radiology.
Which sucks, because I was an X-ray tech. So anyways, Carl then went to, like, describe how he met Elena, you know, love at first sight, visions of her since his childhood. His voice is breaking as he's, like, explaining how he lost her. He's describing her as, like, his bride and how now she's, like, his wife and how he had promised to always take care of her. And there's literally fucking women in the audience weeping.
See, this is why I don't... The story,
like human people.
Yeah, I just don't like this part of the story.
So then he explains that he'd taken the body just a couple of months, according to him, after the burial. 18 months.
Yeah.
And that he had her for near about 8 years. He described how she looked when he first disinterred her, and he made it really clear that he did understand that she was very decayed. And then he described how by himself he had spirited her away in the dark without any help, and that Mario did help him move her in the plane, where Mario was like, the fuck, I didn't fucking know she was in there. I just thought I was riding on top of a plane.
Yeah, that was the best day of his life.
I feel so... They took that from him.
I feel so bad for Mario.
So Carl's, like, admitting that he felt he'd been told by Elena to take her somewhere and keep her safe, and that she was the one that gave him advice, and that she had told him how to, like, hide her body, and that she needed to be hidden a week before the trouble started. And then when he was asked how it would affect him if the body was taken away from him, he said that he would be lost, and that he promised to keep her safe at the cost of even his own life, and so that taking her away would endanger his life. He said that he felt the body in its current condition would last indefinitely.
That's a lot of plastic and cotton balls at this point.
Right? It's a lot of nothing. And then the judge asked this question, quote, do you think there is still life in the body which could be resurrected?
That's a fair question for the judge to be asking.
And Carl literally just says, yeah, there's always life left in the body which can be resurrected by special methods, such as incubation. He says it's not the physical body. The physical body is asleep. The eyes are in darkness. The ears can still hear. He starts saying that's why he's placed Elena close to his organ so she could hear the music, heavenly music. I mean, he's literally like,
Carl.
Yeah, he's droning on all of a sudden about how, like, the vibrations and the music, and every night he plays for her, and how he daily feeds her, like, formula. She needs his powerful X-ray machine to, like, stimulate cavities in her body. Yeah, Carl's just literally, like, he's in the middle of a diatribe about how wonderful he is in taking care and resurrecting her, in order for the judge to have to actually cut him off mid-sentence.
I like this judge.
I think he's just fucking had enough. So he says, Sir, you have had her body in your possession for 7 years. 7 years. And she appears to be completely dead. Lifeless. Not alive. It seems to me that you don't understand. Count von Kozel, listen to me very carefully. What is left of Elena Hoyos is going to be buried. As the presiding justice of this hearing, that is my decision. The state attorney will decide whether or not to bring you to trial.
Yeah, let's get this body out of the way first.
Fucking common sense, right? I think he's had enough of this bullshit, and he made it very clear. So I'm sure you can understand that Carl's response was, quote, "Now may I have Elena's body back?"
Way to go, Carl. Way to go.
Ding, ding, ding. Threw it right out.
Here you go. I didn't know if you were going to ask that, but sure, why not?
My favorite part. Favorite fucking part. Here's the judge's quote. "No! No! You may not! You may not have her body back. She's going to be buried. Miss Medina is her only living relative, and she wants her buried. You are no relative to Miss Hoyos. You have no claim to the body."
Oh, this poor judge.
Oh my god. So, literally, Carl's just like, he can't believe it. He starts arguing with the judge. He's telling him, like, you can't take her away, that her father gave her to him, and that he's paid for everything, so, like, that totally means she's his.
Oh, yeah, of
and
course.
That this is totally going to be the end to everything. No shit. And so Nana, being, like, the bitch that she wants to be, actually interrupts and just goes, "Elena is going to rot on the ground like all her ancestors." Good one, Nana. So, with that, Elena Hoyos is taken away from Carl. Carl's put back on bail at $1,000, which he obviously can't pay. 2 days later, on October 10th in 1940, he gets his psychiatric evaluation, and obviously his lawyer wants to use the insanity plea, but Carl's, like, literally not gonna fucking hear of it.
Count Von Kozel's too proud for that.
He's not crazy. He's totally crazy. But, again, a lot of people confuse intelligence for being sane. They truly do. They just want to see, like, that you can speak clearly, and clearly that means you're smart and you're not insane. Alright, so Carl goes before the panel, and the panel does judge him to be sane. So then October 22nd, the grand jury decides that Carl cannot be prosecuted now, even though he did commit a crime by taking a body. It had happened 7 years ago, and then the statute of limitations kept the court from processing him from removing the body from a crypt. Literally, there was just a 2 years limitation for molesting a grave. Not about fucking a grave, not about taking somebody home, not about making them into a mummy. I guess people gotta really fuck up for you to make a law. So, yeah, basically, he couldn't be held because he'd had her for 7 to 8 years, and that was beyond the 2 year statute of limitations. And then basically on top of that, they just dropped the charges of unauthorized disinterring of a body. So Elena's body was buried in a hidden place where Carl could not find her. In order to do that, only 3 people knew where she was going to be buried. Being as creepy as they could, all 3 of these guys, the police chief, the Lopez Funeral Home undertaker, and the cemetery sexton, came out around at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they went to the graveyard into a predetermined place and buried what was left of Elena Hoyos. And then meanwhile, Carl was released and allowed to go home, but while he's still living in his shack, hundreds of people are now starting to come down to Key West just to visit Carl.
Yeah, of course they are. He's an oddity. He's the original Florida man. And
he put Key West on the map. So Carl's pretty fucking poor, and he starts charging people a quarter to give him a tour of, like, his one-room house. And then he's also keeping busy by writing articles about the event, and then also describing his time in that Australian prison of war camp. So eventually, Carl doesn't want to stay in Key West anymore, and he decides to leave on April 14th, 1941, and it's literally 6 months from the day he'd been released from jail, and he returns up to Zephyr Hills, Florida, not to be with his actual fucking wife.
Yeah, Door's still alive at this point, everybody.
Yeah, and one of his daughters. Look at that. But he actually moves in with his sister, and she's pretty ill, and she was kind of excited to have him come move in because she thought she'd get some help because she's dying.
And he's a handyman.
And instead of being helpful, Carl does not have time for her. He does not have time to help her. He needs to write his memoirs. He needs to get money so that he can fight this and get Elena back.
Of course, his one-track mind.
Yeah, and to top it off, like, he's pissed because his sister won't even let him build a shrine to Elena, which is just unacceptable to him.
Unacceptable.
And on top of it, he's not used to actually living with a living person.
Yeah.
He's not used to someone fucking breathing, shutting doors, talking back to him.
I like how breathing is your first go-to on that.
I mean, it bothers him. So Carl, who has also moved his plane all the way up to Zephyr Hills, decides he's going to go live in the cabin of the plane where he used to keep Elena.
I'm going to live in my plane.
Yeah, so Doris, who is an angel of a woman...
And the hero of this story.
Oh, she comes to Carl once he's come back, and they have a little talk, and she shows him the grave of their daughter, and Carl built an arch with a cross at the grave, but basically that's all he really cared to do or give any kind of consciousness to the death of his daughter, because he was really interested in publishing his memoirs.
Yeah, he wants to get Elena back.
Mm-hmm. And so in 1944, because he can't stand his sister anymore, or probably living in a fucking plane, he gets his own place in Pasco County, Florida, and he can finally build a shrine to Elena. Each week, Doris the Angel comes out and meets Carl at a park, and they talk, and then she actually gives him $2.50 from her $15 a week salary. It's literally keeping Carl from starving. I mean, this man abandoned her like twice, let their child die, just doesn't give a shit, and she's keeping him alive.
Yeah, she's the best.
She is. And in 1950, Carl became a United States citizen.
So we got that going for us, everybody.
Woo! Added it on. So 2 years later, 1952, in July, Carl passed away alone. And the only reason anybody knew was because after a while, people tended to realize they didn't see Carl out collecting flowers for Elena's shrine like he usually did. They sent the sheriffs over to do a welfare check and found Carl dead on the floor next to that shrine, badly decomposed. And that is the man who put Key West on the map, and that is the man who you don't go to Key West for now.
Yeah. So that's just a small part of the mystery of Key West. There's so many more stories that I'm sure we're going to be telling you in the coming weeks that come out of Key West. But Carl Tanzler is definitely the original story for Key West.
And the original Florida man.
The original Florida man. No one else can stand up to him.
So thanks for sticking with us on our first episode, and stay tuned for the next one. And until then, you can find us on all the normal media outlets.
So we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and that's going to be at SNAFUD Podcast. So SNAFUD Podcast, all one word. And from there, we're going to be linking to our website. It's still a little bit under construction, but that'll be all set very shortly.
We can't wait to hear from you guys.
And if you have any stories that you want us to tell, or you have any comments, please just get a hold of us through our social media, and we'll be happy to hear from you.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.